When you hear bodyguard, you probably picture, a suit, an earpiece, maybe standing discreetly behind a VIP.
Right, someone focused on close protection.
Exactly. But what if we told you about a bodyguard unit that's evolved really into something else entirely? A formidable, heavily armed force actually playing a key role in recent international conflicts.
Ooh, quite a transformation.
Today we're taking a deep dive into just that, Hun Sen's Bodyguard unit, mostly known as the BHQ. And this isn't just about security guards, it's about power, it's about history, and frankly, the surprising ways a personal force can shape a nation's path, even regional stability.
Yeah, we've looked at a whole range of sources here to try and get a multifaceted picture of this unit. We'll unpack its origins, how it developed in such a unique way, its funding, which is fascinating in itself, and its wider role in Cambodia's military and political world.
Especially, as you said, given its recent appearance near border areas.
Precisely. That's a key part of the story now.
So our mission for you today is to shed some light on what the BHQ really is, why it matters so much, and what its existence tells us about the dynamics of power in Cambodia. Let's start right there. What is the BHQ, fundamentally?
Well, the BHQ, or Bodyguards of Headquarters, it didn't start with that name. It began as the 246th Battalion.
Okay.
And initially, it was actually just a subunit within the 70th Brigade. Its core job, like you expect, was protecting the top government leaders and their families. So that direct, very intimate connection to the highest levels of power, that was there from day one.
And it's always described as Hun Sen's personal bodyguard division, right? Operating almost separately from the main military structure.
That's the key distinction, yeah.
And what's really telling, I think, is who commands it. General Hing Bonhing. He's often called Hun Sen's right-hand man.
A very close confidant.
And we've actually seen him recently in those critical border zones, Priyavahir and Chongbok, personally leading BHQ forces on the ground.
Absolutely. That presence is significant. The unit itself was formally set up, about 30 years ago now, sometime between 1989 and 1990.
Okay.
And Hun Sen created it essentially as a private force with a very specific goal, protecting himself and his regime from coups. You have to remember the context.
Right, the post-Paris Peace Accord era.
Exactly. Integrating the three Khmer factions, immense political turmoil, internal maneuvering. For Hun Sen, the BHQ was absolutely central to consolidating his grip on power during that really unstable time.
So, okay, a personal bodyguard unit born from political necessity. But what makes it really stand out, and this is where it gets, fascinating, is the training and the funding. Can you actually believe parts of this Cambodian unit meant to protect Hun Sen were trained by the Thai military?
It is a remarkable detail, isn't it? But yes, the Royal Thai Armed Forces Security Center, specifically a unit called Battalion 8, which handles VIP protection, they played a big role in training BHQ personnel.
How did that happen?
It seems it was largely down to the strong personal relationship between Hun Sen and the Thai Army commander at the time, General Shavalit Youngtayud.
Ah, okay.
And that connection helps explain something else, why the BHQ uniforms often look quite similar to the Thai militaries. That training was really pivotal, though. It helped turn them from just a basic bodyguard team into a much more professional armed force.
And they didn't just stop there, did they? Their focus shifted.
Right. Initially, it was all urban combat, VIP security.
Yeah.
But then Hun Sen got tanks specifically for the unit.
Tanks for bodyguards.
Tanks. And that changed things. Suddenly, BHQ personnel needed training for border operations, too. So this dedicated urban force found itself needing skills for frontier warfare as well.
Which brings us to the money. How is this elite tank-equipped unit funded?
Yeah, the funding is different. Very different from other Cambodian military units. The BHQ gets significant extra budgetary funds.
Meaning off the books.
Essentially, yes. The sources are often rumored to be things like casinos, what's often called gray capital.
Gray capital, like semi-legal stuff.
Kind of. It includes alleged links to Chinese gray capital, maybe money from those call center gangs you hear about in places like Poi Pap. Because this funding is direct and often, let's say, opaque.
Right.
It means the BHQ is consistently well-equipped. Modern weapons, good gear. It's a stark contrast to many other Cambodian military units, which often remain underpaid and, frankly, underdeveloped.
It really does highlight a sort of two-tier system, doesn't it? While the regular army might struggle, the BHQ seems to thrive, clearly enjoying favored status.
Absolutely. It underscores just how important this unit is within Hun Sen's specific power structure.
So they look formidable, they're well-funded, but how are they actually viewed in a military sense?
Well, despite the tanks and the funding, most military analysts still see the BHQ primarily as a force for urban combat and internal security. Preventing coups is still seen as its core competency.
So the border deployments are unusual.
They mark a shift, definitely. Deploying to places like Preah Vihear and Chonbuk, it's probably more in a reconnaissance or patrol role. They're not really seasoned in frontier warfare. Reports even suggested General Hing Bunhyang himself spent months in the area beforehand, which sort of implies a need to get familiar with that environment.
And it's interesting, apparently the Thai military, who, as you said, trained some of them, they don't see the BHQ as the main threat on the border.
That's right. According to the sources we looked at, their real focus is on Cambodia's Special Forces Unit 911.
Why them?
Unit 911 proved itself during those clashes back in 2011 at Preah Vihear. They're seen as having real endurance and combat capability. The BHQ, perhaps less so in that specific context.
This all ties back to the bigger picture you mentioned, Hun Sen consolidating power. The BHQ wasn't the only piece, was it?
Not at all. He systematically built a whole network of forces loyal to him, often bypassing traditional military command structures. So you have the BHQ, yes, but also the Anti-Terrorism Unit, the Prime Minister's Security Unit, Division 70, that Special Forces Division 911 we just mentioned, and the Royal Capital Protection Force.
That last one, the Royal Capital Protection Force, that was established later, right, around 2003.
Yes, and it was notably involved in suppressing those protests back in 2014. And it doesn't stop with units. His second son, Hun Manath, holds a key intelligence position. It really locks down family control over the security apparatus.
And the leadership of the entire military, the Royal Cambodian Armed Forces, that changed too.
Dramatically. Back in 2009, Hun Sen replaced the commander-in-chief with Pulsarun, a known loyalist. Then came 2018, a really pivotal year.
What happened then?
Key figures like Pulsarun and the army commander Mia Sophia, they transitioned into political roles, which conveniently opened the door for Hun Sen's absolute closest allies to take the top military spots.
Including his family.
Critically, yes, Vong Paisan became commander-in-chief. But Hun Sen's eldest son, Hun Nane, took over as army commander and deputy commander-in-chief.
So effectively running the show.
Many observers think so, yeah. That Hun Mene is the de facto commander-in-chief now, with these elite units falling under the Army's command, which he leads. And it's interesting, Hun Mene, he's got the West Point education, economics degrees. He's very active in military diplomacy. He projects this image of a modern, capable leader, clearly groomed for succession.
So when you put all these pieces together, the BHQ, the other loyalist units, the family control, the leadership changes, what kind of system does it create?
Well, it looks a lot like what academics often call crony capitalism, or perhaps a Praetorian system linked to the party. You have this tight web connecting the ruling party, the CPP, the military and allied business groups. It all underpins Hun Sen's long-standing power.
And the military's role goes beyond defense.
Oh, definitely. This intertwining allows the military to serve the ruling party, influencing elections, intimidating rivals. It's a system where loyalty, specifically loyalty to the party or certain leaders, gets rewarded. Promotions, economic benefits. It really blurs the lines between military duty and personal or political gain.
And we see examples of that blurring, right? Like high-ranking military families facing investigations over business deals.
Exactly. People like Pol Saron's family have faced scrutiny over alleged financial misconduct and business dealings. It just reinforces how pervasive this intertwined system seems to be.
And this happens even while the regular military funding is stretched thin.
Right. The overall defense budget has increased massively from about $82 million in 2010 to over $640 million in 2020. But even that is often seen as insufficient for the nearly 200,000 personnel.
So how do they fill the gap?
Well, this is where you see military officers and units often generating their own income through, let's call them informal means. Things like seizing land, controlling resources, or providing security services to private companies. Some reports suggest, staggering numbers, like up to 80% of security officials and 30% of military personnel holding these kinds of part-time jobs.
Wow. And the BHQ, with its separate opaque funding.
Exactly. It stands completely apart from that reality. It's funded differently, operates differently.
Okay, let's pivot slightly. We understand the structure now, the BHQ's unique position. But what about the consequences? When these forces, including the BHQ, get involved in conflict, like the recent border clashes, what are the costs for Cambodia itself?
The costs are immediate and, frankly, devastating. Those recent clashes, which were the most severe in over a decade, had huge humanitarian consequences. Over 130,000 people were displaced.
Just from those clashes?
Yes. And Cambodia's military tactics drew international condemnation, particularly the alleged use of BM-21 rockets, basically carpet bombing systems in civilian areas in Thailand's border provinces. That's indiscriminate warfare.
Potential war crimes, essentially.
That's what critics called it, yes. There were also reports of attacks on a petrol station, even a hospital in Thailand, blatant violations of international humanitarian law. And it's particularly striking, as you noted, given leaders like Hun Manet have Western military training.
So beyond the human cost, what about the economic fallout for Cambodia?
It's immense. Cambodia's military, even with the BHQ's tanks, has a massive vulnerability. Virtually no air force, no fighter aircraft.
Leaving ground forces exposed.
Completely exposed to air attack, it could lead to catastrophic equipment losses in a serious conflict, things that would take decades and huge amounts of money to replace.
But there's an even more immediate economic choke point, isn't there?
Yes, and it's critical. Fuel. Cambodia's military and its economy really heavily relies on Thailand for fuel imports, almost all over land.
So starting a conflict with Thailand means?
It means cutting off your own lifeline. It leads towards rapid economic collapse. The minute the border fully closed during those clashes, cross-border trade stopped dead.
And that trade is significant.
Huge, valued at over 174 billion baht annually. Losing that caused tens of billions in losses within just 1 month, which leads to shortages of basic goods, rampant inflation.
And tourism, that must have taken a massive hit.
Instantly collapsed. Tourism is nearly 10% of Cambodia's GDP. Thai tourists are their biggest market. They've vanished overnight. International tourists cancel trips because of the fighting. It really is, as you said earlier, like cutting off your nose to spite your face.
A self-inflicted economic wound.
Deeply self-inflicted. And it goes beyond tourism. Foreign direct investment. Frozen. War signals massive instability. Investors from China, South Korea, the West, they pulled back. The stock market dropped 12%. Construction stopped. Factories closed, leading to huge unemployment.
And what about all the Cambodians working in Thailand? There are hundreds of thousands, right?
Somewhere between 500,000 and maybe 800,000. They send crucial money back home remittances. The conflict meant job losses for them, severed financial lifelines. You risk a major humanitarian and social crisis if hundreds of thousands suddenly have to return home with no work.
The scale of the potential fallout is just enormous.
It's immeasurable, really. You have the inevitable mass casualties if conflict escalates, given the air inferiority. That means huge numbers of disabled veterans that Cambodia's strained budget just can't support. Then there are the tens of thousands of displaced civilians we mentioned, and the social capital, the trust and relationships built over decades across that border through trade and just being neighbors that's shattered, replaced by fear and poverty. These are wounds that take generations to heal.
It paints this picture of just comprehensive economic and social collapse. Largely self-inflicted, as we said, but how is it portrayed inside Cambodia?
Often, it seems, it's framed internally as being the result of Thai sanctions or aggression, rather than the direct consequence of initiating the conflict.
Okay, so connecting this back to the wider world, how did the international community react to these clashes?
Well, it was quite telling, actually. Cambodia appealed for intervention, but the UN Security Council just held a closed-door meeting. No formal statements, no sanctions. It signaled a real reluctance by the major powers to get directly involved.
And ASEAN, the regional body.
ASEAN is committed to non-interference, so they could really only urge restraint. It kind of highlighted its limitations, what some call being a toothless tiger in these situations.
Even close allies, like China.
Even China.
Yeah.
Their main interest is regional stability for trade. They express concern, sure, but they emphasize neutrality, which was effectively a warning to Cambodia.
Yeah.
Don't drag us into this.
So the global reaction was basically universal calls for de-escalation. Cambodia didn't find much support for its actions.
Very little external support, no.
Ugh.
Which really brings us back to that fundamental question, doesn't it? This conflict costing the nation and its people so incredibly much. Was it truly about national sovereignty? Or was it perhaps, as some analysts have suggested, more of a diversionary war?
A diversionary war, meaning?
Meaning a tactic.
Yeah.
Using external conflict to rally national support, distract from domestic issues, and ultimately consolidate power for a select few. All at the expense of the citizens the government claims to protect.
It's a sobering thought.
It is. And this deep dive, I think, shows how a unit like the BHQ, which started as just internal security, really embodies this much larger story. It's about power, it's about patronage, and it's about the devastating real-world consequences when those lines between personal security and national defense get completely blurred.
So, what stands out to you listening to this? How do you think nations evolve? What happens to them when power gets so concentrated? And the loyalty of key forces like the BHQ becomes so tied to one leader, one family. Definitely something to think about as you see news and information coming your way about the region.